Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, no matter where you are in the world. Welcome to the stream. Welcome back for those of you who are used to joining the streams. I'm stoked to be here today. If you didn't know, we dropped a video already today. 5 tips for finishing and releasing more music, like super crucial tips. And in that video, I went ahead and showed you my literal process. Like, you actually watched me upload my latest track to major streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, all major platforms. And that track is out today. So in that, it was a little bit of a gamble if I put up that video and the track actually got delivered to the stores on the day, but DistroKid came through. And within a week and a day's time, the track is up and ready to go. So today we are actually going to be, totally breaking down this whole Ableton project, which it's one of my favorite lo-fi beats I've made, and also one of the major reasons that I chose this track to really finish and get done and out the door was because when I put out the beat video for it, everybody seemed to like it. Like, you all seem to like it, those of you who watch and keep up with the channel. As usual with these streams, technical stuff can go down. If the levels are weird, I'm sure I'll have to give you more track volume or voice volume or whatever. You just let me know. If the camera freezes, I got a lot of headroom today. I kind of adjusted how the camera looks, but you can see more of the studio. So let me know what you think of that. As you can see, there's a shelf above the shelf you normally see, and then there's even a shelf above that. So I'm working on the studio tour. It's 99.999% done. I know I keep saying that, but it's so close. I see a lot of folks in the chat, and that's the great thing about streams, because I will answer your questions as we go. I did see one quick thing. We will have the Launchkey Mini with us today, because that is the controller that I used to make this beat with Ableton Live. I'll talk about the sound pack that I used, all that. But first, let's dip into the chat really quick and see who is here. Mateos, what is going on? Tote, David Henry, OC, Young Yala, what is up? You were ready well before I was ready. I had to get my tea and then I couldn't find my hat. It was a whole mess. Nova Beats is here. Samuel Messiah, what's up? Grandma Beats, what's going on? Fernando, Justin, Alan Hollis, Christian, Joshua, Ray, what's going on? Nick Lovin is back. What's going on? JPM, what's up? Bueno was here earlier in the premiere. Good to see you again. Alexander, what's going on? My mom is here. What's going on, Mom? Jose Luis, what's going on? I'm so stoked that you're here. Diego, Harshal, Pedro, Elijah. And I think I've pretty much gone through the list. Thank you all for being here. I know I saw a bunch of questions in the chat, and we'll do Q&A in a bit. But what I do want to do is kind of dive right into this track, which is probably the reason you're all here, and then we'll do questions later. So if you did ask a question, hang tight. One thing I need from you all right now in this moment, I want to get as many people, as many eyes on this live stream as possible. So what I need you to do is in the chat, I need you to type in the words swipe up. Swipe up, swipe up, swipe up. If you all could just spam the chat with swipe up, swipe up, swipe up, I will go ahead and throw that on my Instagram story. We'll tell everybody to come tune in. I'll do a swipe up link to the stream, all that. So as soon as I see y'all spamming swipe up, we will go ahead and post that on Instagram stories. Yastin, I called you out, I promise. George is here now. Cyrus, what's going on? Gabriel, Mendoza, what is up? OC is kicking us off with the swipe up. So let's go ahead and get ready to do a story. Let's get that spam going. Now you guys get to see like the behind the scenes of the Instagram story. Super awkward, right? What's going on, everybody? We are going live on YouTube, breaking down my latest track. It's a lo-fi beat. I think you guys enjoy. So what you need to do is swipe up. That was perfect, y'all. Thank you so much. So I'm going to link this really quick. I'm curious, how many of you all follow me on Instagram and YouTube? Or are some of you just the YouTube crowd? Let me know. All right, you guys crushed it on the swipe up. Holy crap. You guys did so good. I only have 15 seconds, so I couldn't do that long. Web link. And what I usually do, I usually forget to actually post it. So I have to keep this open while it posts. You guys are crushing it. All right, we're good with the swipe ups. Very good, very good. I know it's on a delay. Let me know. Are you following me on Instagram, or do you just like watching on YouTube? Whatever is fine. However you like to enjoy the content. I will say that there's lots of beat videos up on Instagram. Somebody asked when we were continuing Mentor Monday. We did a call-in show last Thursday for TAETRO Talks. I will continue Mentor Monday next Monday, but today was such a busy day. We had to do all this stuff pertaining to the new track. So next Monday, get ready. You can call in on your Zoom calls, and we'll do advice questions and things like that. I appreciate y'all. I assume folks saying yes means you also follow on Instagram. Great. That's good to know. Both platforms. Yep. OC says if I had Instagram, then I would 100% follow you. OC, today, go make that Instagram. This is our track that we're doing today. I guess maybe I should play it for you all a bit. If you tuned in earlier, let me know. This is actually a good way for us to test track volumes. I'm going to give a little more. I did do the swipe up link. This is our beat today. So let's bring this down. How many tracks total? 16 total tracks. I love this flute sound. We're just doing a listen through, and then we're gonna dig in even deeper. Richard Rocha is following on Spotify. Bonus points, because that's where you can go hear this track. Would love to also know what streaming service you all are using. I like Spotify. But let me know what streaming service you're using so I know where you're going to be listening to the track. Little break here. Bring that flute back in. Jose Luis can play flute. Very cool. You should sample that. Line is right here. It's a group of 3 sounds which we'll dig into deeper. So what do you think? Give me your guys quick impressions. What do you all think so far of the track? Boom. There it is. Marek is asking, do you use loops? Elijah says, come on with that bells to chimes, whatever that was. Maybe you didn't like it, or maybe you did like it. I can't tell. And Engami. I don't know what that is. I'm interested. All right. That is the track. We're in at about 2 minutes, 32 seconds. I usually like to get beats like this at least above 2 minutes. I think I can very easily do that. And as you can see, it's not too complex. Maybe some of you are looking at it and thinking maybe it is a little complex, but this is a very simple arrangement, and we'll get into talking about it and breaking it down for those of you who maybe think it's a little bit complicated. But if I hit tab, I actually want to start in the session view and kind of go over all the different sounds. Everything was sort of built off of this piano sound here. Let's see if I even remember how to play it. Yeah, there we go. And this is such a lovely piano, like lo-fi sample. Like, this is the quintessential piano lo-fi sound. And what I really love about it, it's got that noise behind it. Do you all hear that? It almost has like a river or some vinyl crackle in that sample. And first, I guess what I should mention is, in my video earlier today, I mentioned limitations. That was my number one tip for finishing and releasing music. And the point I was trying to make there was limiting yourself so that you don't have so many options. And I talked about my sample library. If I look at samples here, just filled with everything, plus splice samples, you know, it's a ton. So what I do instead is I'm fortunate enough to get these packs from ADSR. And the pack that I used is called Sample Star, Lofi, Chill, and Study Beats. And I believe this pack was or is on sale on adsrsounds.com. I'm not sure. Not a sponsored stream or anything, just saying. What I really love about this sample pack is, if you notice this sample of the piano, that's a one-shot sample. That's very easy to sample. Same thing when I go over to the bass. Let's look at the bass. Oh, that's too low. Just a one-shot sample there. Let's keep going. Let's look at the synth. Oh, I still have that armed. And then continuing on further, this little track I called Splash. Our flute sample. That's our flute. It's got a little bit of harmonic stuff in there, but it's still cool. And then of course we have our drum samples. And let's put this into drum mode. You know, these are your typical drum sounds here. And where'd that chime go? There it is. Where'd you go? There you are. And those are drum samples. So the reason I bring this up is limitations, limiting yourself to one kit, is because this sample pack, Sample Star, Lo-Fi, Chill, and Study Beats, is especially useful if you're a person that's making a sample pack or something. From my point of view as a producer and someone who wants to, oh, Basha's here. What's up, Basha? Guys, go subscribe to Basha's channel. She does really cool covers, original music, all that. Great vocalist. What I was saying about this pack is, you know, packs come with all different types of files, right? Sometimes they come with loops. Like, let's check this one out, for instance. So this is like a full musical idea. This is like a full drum idea, you know, kick drum loop. This is like almost like a full track arranged, which I think is to give the example of what the kids do, right? But then when we dig into one shots, that's pretty funky. When we dig into one shots, this is where things come super useful for me. I don't love to use instrument loops or even drum loops at that. What I do like to do, however, is take these little one-shot samples. That's the one that I used. Throw them into Simpler, and now I can just play them as my own instrument. So I come up with my own musical ideas. Not that there's anything wrong with using loops or anything. This is just my workflow. So the process of digging through the samples is I'm immediately going into these, and they all have a different key, right? They say what key they're in, they say what BPM, etc. And I immediately am opening the one shot. And if usually they always have drum one shots, right? They always have kick, snare, clap, hi-hat, everything. So those I can easily just click and drag, load into a drum rack. I don't do much with these sounds after they're in here unless I transpose them a little bit or whatever, because they're one shots, single sounds, put them on the drum pads, easy. But let's say I was starting from scratch and I made a new MIDI track here. I would go into my instruments and I could pick Simpler. Drop Simpler in here, and you notice it says drop sample here, meaning that it's open and ready for us to start sampling. So this is how I love to approach making beats, especially from a single sample pack, grabbing samples out of it. Because now if I go to any one of these and if I see an instrument one shot folder, I'm golden. I know I'm so set because I can make anything out of these sounds. So I literally just take these little one-shot sounds, drop them into the Simpler, and now What I'll usually do, however, is change the warp mode. This is kind of crucial because I can do the extremes and really demonstrate this for you all. When I notice this red line that goes across, you can't see. Notice this red line that goes across. It's going very slow because I'm playing a very low note. And the lower I go, the slower it'll go. And the higher I go, it goes super fast, right? That's because we need to warp this sample. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and click on warp. And, you know, there's a few different warp modes. Beats is obviously more for rhythmic and drums, but I float between tones and complex pro for more melodic and harmonic stuff. Let's just try tones. And you notice that line is moving at the same speed. It's playing the sample at the same rate because it's stretching the sample each time we play it to be a uniform length. And there we go. Let me go back and see what exactly I did on that keyboard piano sound. I labeled all these tracks, which is a lot more organized than I usually am. So yeah, I used the tones warp mode. And this is lo-fi, so I'm not mad that it sounds a little bit, you know, stretched and a little bit digital. It's lo-fi, you know, this is what it's supposed to be. Diane Parker, you're here. That's so great. I'm so stoked that you could make it to the premiere and to this stream today. So that is the basic premise for how I approached starting this beat, is finding samples within this sample pack and throwing them into a simpler, whether that be my bass or my piano, my chord synth. Now this splash is labeled one shot, but clearly it had multiple hits in it, and I chose to just grab that fourth one. Notice how they're different notes. And that's pretty good. So just grabbing that is good enough. You'll notice the transposition, which I'm not going to get too much into today, but sometimes you need to mess with the transposition. You need to change the key of these samples to all match one another so they sound good and they're in the same key. Because if you notice, usually sample information has, you know, a number for BPM, and then it also will have like a letter for what note it is at. So that says it's in the key of G. Meanwhile, the flute here says it's in the key of C. So the flute got transposed up 5 semitones. Meanwhile, the splash had to go down 5 semitones. And this is just to get it all into the proper key. Because there's a tuner on this chord synth, so let's check what note this is. So that's playing a D. And I was very unorganized in making this, obviously, because I didn't transpose. Let's see. I did transpose. So this is not perfectly transposed to the keyboard. So when I play a C on the keyboard, this is C. It's actually sounding like an F. Let's go to the piano and see what's up there. That's the same thing. That's also an F. I can just tell by hearing it and comparing it to this note. So that kind of matters. But since I'm just trained in scales and keys and things like that, I can play and transpose on the keys and potentially play instruments in different keys on the keyboard, but they'll sound like they're in the same key. That probably sounds a little bit too technical for those of you just starting out, and we'll do a deeper dive video on that kind of concept, transposing and keys and all that. But for now, let's go ahead and I want to just play it from over here. Let's listen to just each individual loop and see how they fit together. So I think we've heard enough of the keyboard loop. Oh, so the top scene is actually a scene that I did not use. The bottom scene is the scene that I did use. Now we can hear it. So very simple, playing chords. This is really the foundation of the track. The next thing that comes in, of course, is the drums. And let's just break down this rhythm really quick. It's pretty simple. Kick and snare, right? That's very easy. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then I always like to add on top here little either tambourines or shakers or hi-hats. This is usually where the hi-hats are. And if there's room for me to fit in another little hit there, I usually take that opportunity. So that little snap. Something like that. And you notice it is just pretty repetitive. There's our snap. We're going to have a little break right here, which is going to add a little variation. That space, I think, does a lot. Even though it's space, it does a lot to drive forward the sound. Thank you all for tuning in. We have about 90 people watching today. If you are just tuning in and you're new to the channel, my name is TAETRO. Welcome. Today we are breaking down a beat that is my latest release, my latest track that I just put out on Spotify, Apple Music, all the streaming services. In the description of this live stream, you'll find a link that says follow TAETRO on Spotify. You should follow that link and then go listen to this new track. Please let me know if you do that. If you do that from the stream, I would love to know. And make sure you're subscribed. 82% of my viewers are not subscribers, if you can believe that. It's a shame, but... Nick Lovin says tambourines are the secret sauce. It's true. Thank you, Basha. Thank you for the congrats. How to be done? Would you say first to master Ableton Lite, then purchase Ableton Standard? Or if able, just buy Ableton Standard? If you're able to just buy Ableton Live Standard, just get it and start learning with that. If you're waiting, don't wait. Just if you can get Lite, start learning on Lite and then upgrade to Standard when you can. But otherwise, get the best version that you can and start learning on that. Okay, we've made it to the drums. Keyboard, drums, what else is next? The bass is fairly simple. And the backbone of this bass line are really these hits on the strong beats, right? Boom. Boom, bum, bum. Yes, so boom, bum. This is actually following the notes of our chord. So if we look here, A, G, this is our keyboard melody, keyboard chords, remember, A, G, F, and then back to A. Let's look at that bass line. We have A, G, F, hangs on the F, and then leads back up to the A. So the bass line follows our chord progression and follows it in rhythm too, because we go from an A to a G to an F. And that's the same rhythm, chord rhythm, harmonic rhythm, we should say, of our keyboard loop. Because you notice we have the same 4 bars in our keyboard loop. Then we have A, let's solo it, A, G, F, and then, oh, it stays on F. Good, I was right. Follows that same harmonic rhythm. Bass line is following the chords. That's very, very common, and it's playing that root note, the root note of our chords. Next layer, let's talk about the chords themselves, the proper chords. This is almost very similar to the chords being played. Actually, yeah, this is good to point out because this is pretty much following the same pattern as before. So remember we said A, G, F. A, G, F. So if you notice, we're playing that A minor chord, the G major chord, and the F chord. You hear a little bit of, how do we say, fanciness, I guess, on top because I'm adding what's called extensions. So the basic chord is made up of 3 notes, and to not make this too music theory heavy, basic chord is made up of 3 notes. We call that a triad, 3, and then we can add extensions onto that. So that's a 7, 1, 3, 5, 7. Then as I move this hand down, I'm actually going to move this hand up. And you notice this B, there's already a B in this chord, so I'm really just playing the third of this chord on top. And then once we get to the F chord, we are once again playing a 7th chord. 1, 3, 5, 7. Adding in that 9 there. So that's a way to make your chord progression sound a little bit more interesting. Obviously, I would say this sounds a lot less interesting than this. This. So, in my opinion, that's a lot more interesting than just the normal triads, the normal chords. So add extensions to your chords. That would be my one tip from that. Notes on top. Quick Google search of extensions will give you a much better explanation than I just did. Again, don't want to make today too theory heavy. There we go. These little things I called splash. I just love how they sound. And of course we have the flute. And if I recall, this almost sounds just like a loop. But it's slightly different. These two bars are not identical, although the rhythm is. That's how it goes first. And that's the second time around, so it's slightly different. I could have just done this over and over again. But that's not as interesting again as just switching things up. So that gets into that's the literal process of the main ideas of the song. And this is literally this is probably a quarter of the battle, half the battle maybe. It's just coming up with these little loops that all go well together. Because if you've noticed, we haven't left session view yet. We've just been working with our loops. I noticed that I didn't take a look at our lead, but I'm going to wait to take a look at our lead. But for now, I want to dip into the chat a little bit before we get too deep, and then we will go and talk about the arrangement, how we put this all together, and what are some of those audio loops we ended up using. So, who's here? Who's here and who's talking? A lot of folks. If you did ask a question at the top of the stream and I didn't answer it, or you have a new question, feel free to either type your old question back in, or come up with a new question that's based on what we have going on here. I have a question about Diane says, I have a question about the black notes. How do you play them on the push? So push can either be in key or chromatic. That's what we call that when it has all of the notes. And you can do that by adjusting your scale. So if you're using push 2, there's actually a scale button, I believe, that you can press. And in the settings, you can change it from in key or chromatic. And then you'll see that your notes are no longer all illuminated, but you're going to have some unilluminated notes in between. Those are your black keys. Or your out of key notes, depending on what key you're in. OC made a good point. They got the student discount on standard and suite, 40% off. If you are a student, take advantage. That's how I bought live. I bought live as a student with my student ID and saved a bunch of money. Yes. Somewhere over the rainbow. You caught that, Samuel? Interesting. Hania from Pakistan, welcome to the stream. Greetings from across the world. Yes, I answered that. All right, let's jump right back in. In the beginning, we saw Launchkey glowing different color lights. How did you do that? That's just like the screensaver mode of the Launchkey. So if you leave your Launchkey plugged in and don't touch it for a bit, it should do that. Yes. Oh, Cinco Star, I'm so stoked that you're here. I'm glad you can make it live. Appreciate you being here. Skate Alex 2 asks, what are your favorite song starters with lo-fi? Start with little melodies. I'm more of a chord person, so for this track in particular, it starts with this chord progression. And for me, sitting down and playing chords is is just a lot easier way to lay down a track, because when you do start with just chords, you're actually laying like a foundation and a bed down for your whole track to lay on. So when you do that, you're giving yourself space and a progression for a melody to go over. You're also giving yourself a bass line. So no matter what chord progression I'm playing, there's a root note in there. So that F that I'm playing down there becomes the root note. A becomes the root note. G. And then D there. That's kind of a weird chord. But like when you work with chords, it lays a foundation so that you can now layer some melodies and some bass lines over it very easy. The bass line's the easiest thing if you just follow the chord progression, and then layering melodies on top of that, you just kind of find notes that fit, that are in that chord or in that key that can float on top. That's kind of how I start. Scott Vincent asks, have you tried the Launchpad Pro Mark III? Wondering about how you like its chord mode. I have not. It's in the box. I got it from Novation like a week or so ago, and I just haven't had the chance to get it out the box, but I think I'm going to get it out the box and start making stuff with it. I was going to do an unboxing, but I think that's unnecessary, so I'm going to just take it out of the box off camera and start making some cool stuff with it. Cyrus Simon asks, how long have you been producing? I've been producing for, let's say, over 10 years. I used to write songs and produce and like make music like as a songwriter with an acoustic guitar, and that's how I got into music production, because I wanted to record my own songs. Started using like Reaper and then eventually Ableton Live, and then got into the more electronic aspects, and that's how I got into like beat making, electronic music, all that. Samuel Messiah, why do my clips keep getting overdubbed? If your clips are getting overdubbed, that means overdub record is on, which is this circle right up here. So usually, I didn't expect all that when I unsoldered it. Oh, let me go ahead and show you the screen. So this circle right up here is overdub record. So if that is still illuminated, that means your clip is overdubbing. You can likely change it so that it doesn't automatically overdub in the preferences. Is there a difference from using the send return effects or using the effects on a specific track? That is a good question, and yes, there is a difference. So let's actually A/B test this. Piano, right? I've got a little bit of delay here. That's it cranked all the way. That's going to my, return delay here. And then I've got my reverb, right? Let's crank the reverb. This is actually a better example. You hear that? Okay, now I've got a reverb that I'm not using also on that piano. It's at 0% currently. I'm going to turn the return reverb down. I'm going to crank the reverb dry wet on the actual instrument all the way up. That sounds a lot different, right? The difference here between using those send return tracks and using effects directly on the device is when you use return tracks, it still plays the regular signal. It still plays this normal sound that's coming out of the track, and then it also adds a layer of reverb on top with it, alongside it. It doesn't fully take it over. When you put effects on the sound itself, whether it's a delay, a reverb, whatever it is, compression, you are actually affecting the sound, and it's changing the signal of the sound. It's not also playing an effect plus the original sound. Hopefully that made sense. So I like using return effects. As you can see, I have some of them turned on here when I don't want to completely wash out a sound with a reverb. Reverb and delay are the main ones I use them for. So this still has reverb on it, but I don't lose any of the original sound. Hopefully that probably answered the question. Hi from Berlin, Sigma. What's up? Hi from Berlin to California. Elijah says, I have an Arturia Mini Lab. A couple more questions and then we'll get back to arrangement. So if you're just tuning in, thanks for hanging. Elijah asks, I have an Arturia Mini Lab. Great keyboard. Would you recommend having a variety of MIDI keyboards? Do they offer different experiences? They definitely offer different experiences, but don't get confused about like this nice display behind me. I am in the fortunate position of having, my YouTube channel and having brands send MIDI keyboards, and kind of a lot of my popular videos are about MIDI keyboards. So that's how I end up accumulating them. Brands send them so I can do reviews and, I can cover them. So that's why I have a ton. That said, if you're a hobbyist, it doesn't make that much of a difference to have a bunch of different MIDI keyboards. However, they do provide different experiences and you will work with them differently. The Arturia Mini Lab has Ableton Live controls, has amazing keys, works so well with Analog Lab and all of Arturia's sounds. Meanwhile, the Launchkey, which you were asking, somebody was asking about the cool display, so we'll put that on. However, the Launchkey has a superior Ableton Live control experience. So I don't have to choose between one or the other, but everybody has that luxury. So that's kind of where I stand on that. However, like when you get into a little bit more variety, like the Seaboard block, which I have behind me, that's a totally different kind of controller. The MPK Mini I might bring out with me if I'm going outside because I can't see lights on controllers that easily. I might bring the Sensel Morph with me if I have to just, travel somewhere and throw this in a bag because it's super thin. So there's lots of different use cases for different kinds of MIDI controllers. But usually if you're going to buy multiple, you want to buy ones that kind of supplement each other or have some purpose beyond, being just comparable to other MIDI keyboards. A cheap way to get production gear, especially Rolly products. If you're really interested, Gandalf, if you're really interested in getting more expensive gear and you really want to invest in gear, you really have to trust yourself to be able to do this. But to get some of my most expensive gear when I was first starting out and didn't have much, I used, opportunities to have credit and pay over time with 0% interest. My first MacBook I did that with. I couldn't afford a MacBook outright, so I applied for the Apple credit card and, paid no interest. So I paid the same amount for the laptop that I would have if I just bought it all on that day, but I paid a little of it each month over time. But you have to really be responsible and financially responsible, or else you will end up paying a lot more for the item. So credit deals, those can work, and they're a good way to build credit as long as you're responsible enough. Raul, I'm not modifying the lights at all. They're just doing this because it's the screensaver mode. Voodoo Mind, what up, peeps? What's going on, dude? Nice to see you. Welcome. Got the NI Complete S49 Mark II. I'm just having a hard time finding a workflow in Ableton. Yeah, it's tough with the Complete keyboards. They're really good for the Native Instruments plugins, but then when it comes to Ableton Live Control, maybe pair it with a Launchpad, like a Launchpad X or something. Get a second workflow controller. I know it's probably not what you want to hear. Capel, you made it. I'm so stoked you could be here. Richard asks, how in Ableton do I put vocal one-shots, like playing them on a piano? Different notes like you do. So we covered that earlier today. So if you rewind the stream, you will see I talked about how to throw piano samples in here and warp them. That is exactly how you can do that with vocal samples. Cool. I want to actually... Oh, congrats, Capel. Capel's on vacation. Give it up for Capel. We should all be on vacation. I will definitely make an Ableton tutorial, Samuel. Don't worry. Basha asks, this is the last question, and then we'll do arrangement. Which Launchpad do you recommend? I've been thinking about getting one, but don't know. Use FL Studio. If you use FL Studio, you do great work for somebody who uses FL Studio. But if you use FL Studio, I don't know if I would recommend a Launchpad for real, because so much of the workflow is about Ableton Live. Maybe the X. I wouldn't get the Pro. Well, the Launchpad Pro also has a sequencer, so maybe that would be more useful for you. I don't use FL, so I don't know if I can answer that well. But look up the Launchpad Pro and how it has a sequencer. The Launchpad X is, I think, mostly an Ableton controller, but it's still a good controller for that. All right, folks. I'm going to hop out the chat for a moment, and I'm going to dive back into the project. So what do we do with all these loops? I didn't even mention that I have some audio loops here, some percussive loops, but we'll get into that in a moment. Last thing I'll note before we go into arrangement view is that all of these sounds are sidechained. They all have this compressor at the end of them, sidechain, and they're all taking a signal from the kick drum. So I go audio from where? Drum rack. Which drum in the drum rack? The kick. And every time a kick hits, it sends a signal and it causes that sound to kind of pump. Here's the keyboard sound without it. Here's it with it. You hear that ducking. That's just a mixing thing. That's just something I like to do. From there, folks, we got to grab all of our loops and click and drag them, press tab, and put them into our arrangement view and start putting them on the timeline. This is crucial. So I start plotting things out, right? And this is going to be a little weird with the numbers at the top here because I started about one beat in. So the numbers are each off. But let's get this to be quarter note. Cool. So you notice we're working in 4-bar loops mostly. This little rectangle size here, we can kind of start to recognize that as 4 bars. You notice that this is the same size as well. This is the same size. And when I start plotting out with loops in my arrangement view, I'm thinking about the rate of change. How often do I want something new to happen to keep the listener interested? Especially with short form loop-based music. That is my most important goal, is to keep people interested and keep listening. So I go for 4 bars, and we have our keyboard loop, which kind of carries us to the drums. Next 4 bars, we have the drums and the keyboard. The next 4 bars, we have the flute, the drums, and the keyboard. Followed by the flute goes away, the bass comes in, and I could do this through the whole track. We could just start to notice that every 4 bars, something different happens. Either something new comes in or something drops out. And you figure out that rate of change for your track and what makes it most interesting. Usually it's in some increment of 4, 8, 16, etc. And you see, we go right along. Every 4 bars, I'm using this to highlight the every 4 bar mark. Something new comes in until eventually here we're at the peak of the track. We're about 3/4 of the way through, which is where I like to have the peak of the track happen. That's like the golden ratio, right? You build up to something and then 2/3 of the way through, 3/4 of the way through, that golden ratio tells you have something great happen, something that we've all been waiting for. And what that amounts to me in my tracks is everything playing at the same time. Not everything playing at the same time, but finally all the elements you've heard coming together in a really beautiful way, where before we got different combinations of every item, but we never had them all like we do here at around bar 25. And then building, and then you see things slowly start to taper off into an outro. So that is how I like to arrange the tracks, of course. You notice there's some other stuff here that wasn't some of the musical ideas that we went over earlier. One of them being this field recording sample. Let's just take a moment of meditation and listen to the field recording sample. Do you guys hear that? So that is the sidechain. There's also a sidechain on the field recording. And it came right in where the drums came in. Something like a field recording for lo-fi especially is really, it's one of the main elements of lo-fi. And I just like having the listener enjoy a track and also feel like they're being transported to a space. And a field recording can really do that. So you notice that the field recording is kind of over the first half of the track. It's there. Then it drops out for that main hook of the track where everything's playing, and then it comes back in towards the outro. So that's how I used a field recording here to add, it's just a nice little extra element beyond just the musical ideas. The next item, I talked about this, I call them bells and whistles in the video that I put out earlier, are things like transitions. And this is also where we start talking about how, you know, at first I was limited. I used one sample pack to come up with all of the musical ideas. Then once I started to have an arrangement built up, then I could actually feel like I branch out because I have an actual need. I'm like, oh, I need a cool, airy sounding transition track. So then I would usually dip into something like Splice or the rest of my sample library and find some cool sounds that go well with the track. So I've got that build up there, as well as, let's listen to this sound here. An inhale. I just think that adds so much to this transition. And this track is called Unwind, so it's supposed to have a breathy, airy feeling, relaxing sort of. You notice we use another breath sample here. And one thing that I'll do a lot of the time that I'm sure I did in different parts of this track, where if we took this breath sample and just duplicated it really quick, oops, go away. We can actually just easily reverse samples. So I'll either on a downbeat have a sample like an exhale here. It's an exhale. I could very easily make something like an exhale and inhale and build up to a downbeat. So that is one way that I kind of use those samples. And we'll notice different versions of this sprinkled. So if you see anything that's in the shape of a sideways triangle or a sideways Christmas tree, I guess, those are my little transition sounds. So let's hear this one. I'm usually adding lots of reverb, so they have even more of a tail. So that has 4 seconds of reverb, almost 5. It's at 72%. And that just makes for a very nice arrival point at a new section of a track. Again, these are just sprinkled in here at different spots just to make things sound more interesting. Another reversed exhale here, and then here I do exactly what I talked about before and reverse that exact sample to build up to something. Let's listen to it build up. You can see I did some automation because I actually use the breaths later on down the road as a rhythmic element. So let's actually listen to these together. That's so subtle, maybe you didn't hear it. And you notice I'm accenting every other one. Every other one of these breath sounds has this little automation bar on it so that every other one is accented and a bit louder. This is also where we can talk about some of the audio loops that I used too. So we have a percussion loop here. I love using shaker loops. Usually this is something I add in the arrangement phase if my hi-hats just aren't adding enough. But these help add movement. These help show your listener how you're supposed to move to the track. And we have this little tambourine sample. Those combined make for a great little rhythm percussion section. One other thing I'd like to point out is you notice that if I hit tab, the only drum loop we have is this one. What I like to do when I get to the arrangement phase is actually reduce it and use different versions of it. So you can see here, here, and here, as well as here and here. We're using the full out drum loop. But here it becomes a little bit reduced. So we've taken some stuff away. We've only kept the kick, the snare, and the snap. And then eventually in the next 4 bars, we take the kick away. So that's a way to get some more mileage out of a single drum loop. Just take elements out. So especially for this section, it makes sense to reduce, and then we're full on back in. Let me know if there are questions that I'm not answering in chat, because I will happily dig into the project a little deeper if you would like. I think the last thing I want to talk about in this track before I dip back into chat and we can hang out for a bit is actually the lead, because I think the lead is super unique. The lead is actually in a group. So if you didn't know, you can group together different tracks, different instruments, right? So these are all different instrument sounds. This is more of a synth sound. This is a pizzicato string sound, like a plucked string. And this is a guitar. All of them, all three together, make this. And if I start to take them away, let's say I just had the synth. Doesn't that sound so empty? What if I just had the pizzicato strings? Missing something. And that definitely can't work by itself. That is almost functioning as a bass. But when you put them all together, they make one really great sound. So layering is a great kind of just sound design technique where you take a single sound, a single melody, and you just copy it across a few different instruments and you process them all together. So they're all in one group, they're all filtered together. And then we can also, let's look at this one because this one's a bit lower. So this one starts on, it's all the same exact melody, same exact copied musical idea, except octaves changed. So this one starts on A1. Meanwhile, this one, oh, that one also starts on A1. Let's see this one. Starts on A2. So these two are playing an octave lower while the synth is sitting on top, meaning our ear is mostly catching the synth, but the body of the sound is coming from the pizzicato strings and the more bass guitar sound. Process them together and they sound pretty good. They sound a lot better than they do just on their own. Also take note of the panning here. These two layers are panned opposite each other. This one is panned to the left, this one is panned to the right. Meanwhile, the lead synth is dead in the center, so it's the main thing you're hearing. Yastin, yes, you can use those plugins with the Novation Launchkey. And here we see that filter automation. And then reducing again, similar concept to taking drums out, take one of the sounds out. So now taking that synth out, but leaving this melody played on these two instruments is pretty effective. And then the track slowly fades, our field recording slowly fades. All right, chat, what did I not answer? What do you want to know more about this track? What other questions do you have? Let's get into it. Let me know in the chat right now, have you listened to this track yet on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play? Let me know if you have, where you've listened to it, and if you haven't listened to this track yet, why haven't you? Seriously though, my Spotify link is in the description. You can totally go follow me on Spotify. I would really appreciate it. I would also appreciate if you guys share on Instagram stories. Let me know you're listening so I can share it on my page as well. Helps me get the word out about the track even more when I can show folks listening to it. So would love to hear you all see you all listening to the music or like screenshotting it, whatever. That would be great. Samuel Messiah asks, how do I fix MIDI controller input latency? Let's do that right now. All you have to do is go to Live, Preferences. Where are we? Audio. There's a latency section here, and then there's a buffer size value. My buffer is pretty low because my computer is pretty capable. I have a MacBook Pro with a good processor. So you want to set that number to as low as you can go without having any problems. Because if you set it too low, you might start to get crackles or distortion in audio, and you definitely don't want that. You'll know if you're having a problem. And once you start to run more plugins, it becomes more of an issue. But get that number as low as possible. Sometimes it comes by default at 512, which you'll definitely feel the latency. If you can get it as low as 256, 128, as low as you can possibly go, you'll have less latency. And that is how you solve that. Nova Beats asks, not sure if you already answered this question, but how do you choose which sample pack to base your track off of? I just have to like the vibe of the sample pack. It has to have the right kind of samples. Again, going back to, does it have one-shot instrument samples, or does it have cool synth presets? Those things play a big role because those make it easier for me to work with the tracks. Oh, did I just do that whole tutorial thing with just my camera on? Ready, Samuel? Let's do this for real. Preferences. Latency. Well, we're in audio, and then under latency, drop down menu, get this number as low as you can without experiencing any crackles. Sorry, I kind of messed that up. Ellie Beats, you're listening to it now. What platform are you listening on? I would love to know. Samuel, ACO for all driver? Yes, if you're using Windows, that's, I believe, what you need, but I haven't used Windows in a while. Basha asks, what inspired you to create it? I don't know. I'm making music all the time, so it's not like I have moments of inspiration. Like, it's not quite like writing songs where you have moments of inspiration that guide a lyric or something. It all comes down to my mood on the day and what I'm feeling and where I want to be transported to. Because like I said, I want the listener to be transported, but I'm also trying to transport myself. I'm going to throw this track on in the background, guys. If you think it's too loud, let me know. Ellie's listening on Spotify. Pedro's listening on Spotify. Good to know. Good to know. Epic. Make sure you follow. Like, don't just listen. Also follow, because then it puts any new music I put up into your release radar, etc., etc. Ellie Beats also has music on Spotify. All right. Jesper from Stockholm, what's going on? Which VSTs would you bring on a deserted island? Well, I have one that I love using that I use on my mastering chain. The J37 tape emulation. I would bring that on a deserted island, of course. And then in terms of instruments, like plugins, what would I bring? It's hard to say. I love the Repro and the Diva from UHE. I love all of the Analog Lab stuff. I mean, am I limited? I don't know. A lot of those plugins. TAETRO Dog, what's up? I'm back. I haven't been making much music the past month. It's good to be back and making some beats. Welcome back. Sometimes you gotta take a break. Sometimes life forces us to take a break, but when you come back refreshed, it always feels good. How do I make a note repeat on the Novation Mk3? Easiest way to do a note repeat is to use the arpeggiator. So if you wanted to have a note repeat, even on a drum rack, let's actually demonstrate it on a drum rack. If I wanted to have this hi-hat repeat, I can go ahead and grab MIDI effects, arpeggiator, toss it on that sample in particular. Now all I'm doing is holding down. Look, just holding it down. I can change the rate. And then if I wanted to, I could even I could map this button and turn that on and off. That's an easy way to do a note repeat on the Launchkey. Adish Datar says, your videos are of top quality. Could you give a walkthrough of your video production process? I think I will do that soon. I will do a beat making video tutorial because more people are asking for that. I could actually make a course out of that probably. OC, in Livelight, it is possible to get these samples. So you can download these sample packs. If the samples are audio, you can throw them in any version of Ableton. You're not limited. This was fun. I wonder who watched the video earlier too. If you didn't, that should be your next stop after this stream, because you probably want to release a lot more music too, just like I do. Oh, see, as soon as I saw your music on YouTube, I followed on Spotify. Thank you so much. That's good to know. GZD, what's going on? Do you use the stacking instruments technique or a Soundcraft and analog operator technique more often for melody? Yes, I would say GZD, I use that technique of stacking the sounds a lot more for melody, especially if one sound is just not doing it for me. Sometimes it just needs to be stacked. Sometimes it literally just needs an octave lower. I mean, that's a piano technique too, playing octaves. We are coming to the end of our stream here, my friends. I'm so stoked that we could do this today. This has been a ton of fun. I want to drop the specific Spotify link to this song in the chat right now. If y'all could please go to that Spotify link, follow me on Spotify, and yeah, listen to the track, put it in your playlists, tell all your people who have lo-fi playlists, put it in their playlist. That would be amazing. Y'all are so nice. The Kit Complete says, I'm new to the channel, but just want to say I'm loving the content. Thank you so much. I'm going to try to keep the content high level. I'm trying to do new beat videos every Tuesday, so there should be a new beat video coming out tomorrow. More tutorials. Every Monday we will be doing more live streams. So live, usually they won't be like this. We'll do call-in shows. So you'll actually be able to call me and ask for creative advice and ask your questions live on the air, which I really love to do on Mentor Monday. OC says, would everyone agree that TAETRO deserves more subs? I appreciate that a lot. One of the best ways you can help me with that is just recommending a video to a friend, asking friends to sub, sharing a video, sharing a track, and 82%, guys, 82% of people who watch my videos are not subscribed. So that's crazy. If I already have like 89 or 88,000 subscribers and 82%, and that's only like 12% of the audience, that's crazy. But that just means I got to work harder to get people to subscribe more. Pedro, what I can say is a lot of the elements that like I incorporate into my everyday life, like problems with starting, adding limitations, that's one of the tips in this book. I mean, that's become part of my daily exercises. If you guys don't know, Pedro's talking about this book, Making Music, 74 Strategies for Electronic Music Producers. It's a really great book. Clips from Ableton Live in it. It's written by Dennis DeSantis, who, you know, is from Ableton. And you don't read it like a novel. You say, okay, I'm having trouble with starting today. Let me go to the chapter on problems with starting. Or, okay, I'm having trouble progressing. Let me go to the chapter on problems with progressing. And just taking one chapter a day, doesn't even have to be in order. It's a really good exercise. It's a really great book, and I'm pretty sure the ebook is free. Jorkus67 says, just subscribe. Thank you. I appreciate it. Basha asks, which monitors do you recommend? I was using KRK RP5s for a while, and I love them. They last me a long time. They were too big for this setup, so I got these simple JBL speakers that I'm still getting used to. Don't love the bass response so far. But KRK RP5s were my starter monitors if you want 5-inch. Big 5-inch monitors. They lasted me so long. I still have them. I appreciate you all. If you want to support, I'm trying to get memberships on the channel. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. A lot of channels have memberships where you get special emotes and we can do member-only streams. I also have Patreon, patreon.com/TAETRO, where if you wanted to support, you could go and support for as little as $1 and get an invite to the Discord. That's always an option, but I do want to experiment with memberships once I get it. I reached out to YouTube support, so hopefully they're hooking me up with that. I hope you enjoyed this track. Let me know Let me know if you did. Put it on your Spotify playlists. Listen to it every day if you can. I'm trying to get the Spotify numbers up there. And I'm trying to release more tracks every month. So if you follow on Spotify and you follow on Apple Music, wherever you listen to music, you should expect a steady flow at the beginning of each month, because that is my goal, and I'm having you all hold me accountable to that. I can't iterate this enough. 82% unsubscribed. 82% of the viewers are not subscribed. So please click the subscribe button if you enjoy the content. Dip into the beat making playlist, dip into the tutorials. I've got hundreds of videos, almost 300, if not over 300 by now. And that's super fun. New beat video tomorrow. Turn on notifications so you know when they happen. I know that there were more questions and I can't get to them all, but reach out on Twitter at Nick TAETRO, NickTaetro. Reach out at me, and I will do my best within the next couple hours to answer as many questions that come my way over on Twitter. Thank you all so much for listening. Share the channel, subscribe, all that. Really appreciate you all for being here. Thank you. George, thank you so much. Samuel, thank you so much. Basha, thank you for being here. Adish, I know I can't name everybody in the chat because there's so many of you, so I appreciate all of you, I promise, even though if I can't go and name everybody. Yes, click that notification bell. Perfect. All right. That's all for today, folks. So thank you so much for tuning in. More streams like this in the future, every Monday. Beat video tomorrow, I believe. More tutorials coming. Pretty sure I got to shoot a tutorial today. This has been TAETRO. Have a good one.